Some of you are not missing your blessing because God is silent. You're missing it because you're listening to the wrong voice. How many times have you said, "I think God told me," and later realized, no, that was just me talking to myself? Let's be honest. There's nothing more dangerous than making a life decision, thinking it's God's voice, when it's really your own thought, or worse, a distraction sent to pull you away from your purpose. Family, hearing the voice of God is not about goosebumps, emotions, or wishful thinking. It's about clarity, alignment, and obedience. And until you learn to separate your inner noise from God's direction, you will keep living in confusion and calling it faith. Today, I'm going to show you 6 ways to clearly know the difference between God's voice and your thoughts. By the end of this, you'll have the confidence to know when God is speaking and when your mind is just making noise. When God speaks, His words will always align with the purpose He designed for you before you were even aware of it. His direction is not random, accidental, or based on momentary feelings. It is deeply connected to the blueprint of your destiny. Your life is not an accident, and neither is His voice in your life, but your own thoughts. They are often shaped by what feels safe, what feels easy, what avoids discomfort. Your mind will gravitate toward the path of least resistance. It's human nature. We want the smooth road, the predictable routine, the option that costs us the least. Think about it. How many times have you felt a deep inner pull towards something big, bold, and significant, but then talked yourself out of it because it was too hard or too risky? That inner pull wasn't just random imagination. It could very well have been the voice of God aligning you with what you were created to do. But then your own thoughts stepped in like a lawyer, building a case for why you shouldn't move forward. Your thoughts will say, "That's too much work. What if you fail?" Or, "You're not ready yet." They will dress up fear as wisdom. God's voice, on the other hand, will call you into something that may stretch you, challenge you, and even scare you. But deep down, you will know it is right. The call will be bigger than your comfort zone, but perfectly tailored to your life's assignment. Your thoughts will say, "Stay where you are, it's safer here." God's voice will say, "Step out, I have more for you." One is focused on survival, the other is focused on significance. Let's take a simple, relatable example. Imagine you're in a job that pays the bills, but drains your soul. You've been sensing a nudge for months to start that business, to go back to school, to write that book, or to step into a new career. Every time you think about it, you feel an unusual excitement mixed with fear. That excitement is your spirit recognizing purpose. But then your mind interrupts. You can't afford it. You might fail. What will people think? That's comfort speaking. That's your thoughts choosing the known over the unknown. But God's voice isn't concerned with whether the path is familiar. He's concerned with whether it fulfills your destiny. When God speaks, His words are not always the most convenient, but they are always the most constructive. They will develop you, refine you, and position you for impact. He will lead you into places that require courage, patience, and faith. Your own thoughts will lead you into places that require none of that, because they are designed to protect you from discomfort. The problem is comfort zones are beautiful, but nothing grows there. Look at the pattern in your own life. Every major breakthrough you've had required a step that wasn't comfortable. Every growth season in your life began with a moment where you didn't feel ready but moved anyway. That is the difference. Your thoughts will wait for the perfect conditions. God's voice will create the conditions as you obey. There's another thing: God's voice will often sound unreasonable to your mind. It will tell you to take a step when you have no visible guarantee. It will tell you to invest in something when logic says, save. It will tell you to walk away from something everyone else thinks is great because he sees what's coming. Your thoughts will always want proof before action. God's voice will often require action before proof. I've seen people miss incredible opportunities because they mistook the discomfort of purpose for a warning sign. They thought, if it's hard, maybe it's not God. But difficulty is not the absence of God's voice. Sometimes it's the evidence of it. Purpose will always cost you something: time, energy, comfort, even relationships. But it will give you something far greater in return: fulfillment, impact, and the satisfaction of knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. Daily life is full of these moments. It could be something as simple as reaching out to reconcile with someone you haven't spoken to in years. Your thoughts will tell you, they don't care, they won't listen. Why bother? But God's voice might be prompting you toward healing and restoration because it's tied to your personal growth. Or maybe it's that urge to mentor a young person, to volunteer, to step into leadership. Your thoughts will list the reasons why you're too busy or unqualified. God's voice will remind you that what you have is needed now, not someday. The key is recognizing that when an idea pulls you toward growth, significance, and obedience to truth, even when it feels uncomfortable, it is more likely to be God's voice than just your own thought. When an idea pushes you to settle, delay, or take the easy way out, it's probably just your mind clinging to comfort. One will develop your purpose, the other will defend your comfort zone. The truth is, comfort is not always your friend. It can be the enemy of your destiny if you let it control you. Your thoughts will prioritize comfort because they want to keep you safe. God's voice will prioritize purpose because He wants to see you fulfilled. And between safety and fulfillment, one will protect you for a moment, the other will prepare you for a lifetime. When God speaks, His voice carries a kind of peace that doesn't make sense to the human mind. It's not the peace that comes from everything around you being perfect. It's not the peace that comes from knowing all the answers or having every bill paid and every problem solved. It's the peace that can exist right in the middle of uncertainty. The kind of peace that shows up in the storm, not after the storm has passed. Your own thoughts, on the other hand, are often restless, anxious, and driven by the need to control outcomes. They play every possible scenario in your mind, over and over, trying to predict the future and avoid pain. They make you lose sleep, rehearse conversations in your head, and second-guess yourself until you are exhausted. The difference is subtle but powerful. When it's just your thoughts, the more you think, the more tense you feel. When it's God's voice, the more you reflect on it, the calmer you feel. His words may challenge you, but they don't torment you. They may stretch you, but they don't strangle you. Your thoughts are like a room with too many loud voices speaking at the same time, each competing for attention. God's voice is like a steady, calm stream cutting through the noise, inviting you to listen, not forcing you. Think about the times in life when you've had to make a big decision. Maybe you had 2 job offers, and on paper one looked perfect. Higher pay, better benefits, the one everyone told you to take. But something about it didn't sit right. The other job, the one with less pay, had a sense of peace attached to it that you couldn't explain. Your thoughts said, "This doesn't make sense. Take the bigger paycheck." Be logical. But deep down, there was a stillness pulling you toward the other option. That's what peace from God feels like. It's not always logical, but it's solid. It anchors you in a way human reasoning cannot. You see it in everyday life. Maybe you've faced a difficult breakup. Your thoughts race, asking, what did I do wrong? How could they walk away? What will people think? You toss and turn at night, replaying every detail. But then one day, you quiet yourself long enough to sense something deeper. A still voice saying, it's okay, you're gonna be fine. This is not the end of your story. And suddenly, even though the situation hasn't changed, your heart feels lighter. That's the peace that comes from a voice higher than your own. It doesn't erase the pain, but it soothes it. It's not denial, it's reassurance. When your thoughts lead, they usually need evidence before they can relax. They say, show me proof everything will be okay, then I'll be calm. God's voice brings calm first, before you see the proof. That's why people who hear Him clearly can walk through situations others think are unbearable and still smile. It's not that they don't feel the pressure. They just aren't ruled by it. Their peace is not attached to circumstances. It's attached to the one who spoke to them. Pressure in life is inevitable. Bills will come due. People will misunderstand you. Plans will fall apart. But here's the test when you think you're hearing God's voice. Check the fruit of it. Does it bring a quiet stability in your spirit, or does it stir up panic? Because panic is a clue that you're leaning too hard on your own understanding. Peace is a clue that you're leaning on His. I've met people who say, I think God is telling me to do this, but they're biting their nails, snapping at their family, and losing weight from stress. That's not peace. That's pressure masquerading as purpose. God's voice might lead you into a situation where your comfort is challenged, but you will carry an internal stability that surprises even you. It's like standing in the middle of traffic and somehow knowing you won't be hit. One of the clearest ways to tell the difference is to watch what happens in the quiet moments. When you stop moving, when you're alone, when the distractions fade, do you feel settled inside, or do you feel like you're about to break? Your own thoughts will replay every worst-case scenario. God's voice will repeat the same assurance over and over, like a song stuck in your spirit. I've got you. Keep walking. Daily life will test this constantly. You might be raising kids and worrying about their future. Your mind will calculate every possible danger, every mistake they could make. But then a thought will come that doesn't sound like you. They are in my hands. Keep guiding them. But trust me with their journey. And suddenly you breathe again. You stop hovering and start leading with faith. That's peace under pressure. Even in financial stress, the pattern is the same. Your thoughts scream, there's not enough. You're going to lose everything. But God's voice whispers, you've made it before. You'll make it again. This is not the end. And that whisper is so steady, so unshakable, that it drowns out the noise. The bills are still there, but your heartbeat slows. You face the pressure without being consumed by it. This is why peace is such a powerful indicator. It's not about denying the pressure or pretending life is easy. It's about knowing which voice you are following. Your thoughts will try to calculate their way out of pressure. God's voice will guide you through it without losing your soul in the process. You can be under attack on every side and still walk with your head up, because His peace is not the absence of trouble. It is the presence of assurance in the middle of it. When God speaks, He doesn't change His mind every time your circumstances change. His voice is steady, unwavering, and consistent, like a lighthouse on the shore that shines the same direction, no matter how rough the waves get. But your thoughts, they are like the wind. They can blow north in the morning, east by noon, and south by evening. They are influenced by how you feel, by what others say, by what you see happening around you. One phone call, one social media post, one unexpected event can completely shift your opinion. That's why relying solely on your thoughts will leave you in a constant state of confusion, because your thoughts are not anchored. They are reactive. God's voice doesn't flip based on your mood. He doesn't tell you to start something today and then whisper, "Never mind, tomorrow because you're tired." If He says go, He means go, even if it rains, even if it's cold, even if people don't believe in you. His direction is tied to His nature, and His nature is stable. Your thoughts, however, are tied to your emotions, and emotions are unstable. They can convince you that something is right when you're excited, and then convince you that the exact same thing is wrong when you're afraid. Think about it in everyday life. Maybe you decide to start going to the gym. The first day you're motivated, your thoughts are cheering you on, telling you how good this will be for your health. But then, after a long day at work, when you're tired, those same thoughts start saying, "You can skip today. One day won't hurt. You'll start again next week." This is how your thoughts operate, shifting with your energy, influenced by your surroundings. But if God speaks to you about taking care of your body, that instruction won't fade when you get tired. His voice will keep calling you to it because it's about purpose, not convenience. I've seen this happen with relationships too. Someone prays about whether they should commit to a person, and they sense a clear yes from God. But weeks later, after a small argument or misunderstanding, their thoughts start saying, "Maybe this isn't right. Maybe you made a mistake." The instruction didn't change. Their emotions did. God's voice doesn't bounce back and forth like a tennis ball depending on whether the last conversation felt good or bad. His guidance is rooted in truth, and truth doesn't bend to accommodate temporary feelings. Your thoughts are like the weather. They can be sunny in the morning, cloudy in the afternoon, and stormy by nightfall. God's voice is like the sun itself, always present, even if clouds temporarily block your view. The problem is, many people make life decisions based on the weather of their mind rather than the unchanging nature of God's direction. That's why they start something and quit halfway. They change their goals every month. They chase one dream, then abandon it for another the moment things get hard. Have you noticed how your thoughts can be swayed by other people's opinions? You might feel sure about something, but then you talk to a friend who doubts it, and suddenly you're questioning everything. Or you see someone else succeeding in a different path, and now you're wondering if you should be doing what they're doing instead. God's voice is not like that. If He's leading you somewhere, someone else's journey won't make Him change His plan for you. You don't need to compare roads when you're certain of the one you're on. The power of consistency in God's voice is that it becomes an anchor in a world full of noise. You can be in a storm. You can be surrounded by conflicting opinions and still feel certain of your direction because His voice doesn't shift with the wind. That's why people who truly learn to recognize it walk with a quiet confidence. They are not running around chasing every new idea because they already know the assignment. Daily life tests this constantly. Imagine God told you to save money for a future project. That instruction will stay the same whether the market is up or down, whether your friends are spending freely or not. But your thoughts, they'll say, "Go ahead and spend. You only live once," when you're in a good mood. And then, "Why didn't you save more?" when you hit a financial snag. God's voice holds one clear, steady line through it all. This is why you must learn to recognize the difference. When the direction keeps shifting based on how you feel that day, that's your thoughts talking. When it remains firm, even when your emotions push back, that's a sign it may be God's voice. Stability is not stubbornness. It's the mark of truth that doesn't need to adjust to keep you comfortable. Your destiny requires this kind of stability. Every great calling demands the ability to keep walking in the same direction, even when your feelings don't want to cooperate. Your thoughts will tell you to take shortcuts, to slow down, to quit when the results aren't instant. God's voice will keep saying, keep going. The finish line is ahead. And if you hold on to that steady voice, you'll see results that changing thoughts could never produce. When God speaks, He often says things your flesh doesn't want to hear. His voice will push you toward discipline when your body wants ease, toward forgiveness when your pride wants revenge, toward patience when your emotions are screaming for action. Your own thoughts will almost always lean toward what feels good in the moment, what satisfies the craving, what keeps you from discomfort. That's why so many people mistake their desires for divine direction, because they've never learned that the real voice of God rarely agrees with the part of you that just wants to be comfortable, validated, and unchallenged. Your thoughts will say, you deserve this. You've worked hard, so indulge a little more. Don't push yourself, you've done enough. But God's voice might say, get up early and work on that assignment I gave you. Your thoughts will say, they hurt you, so you don't owe them anything. God's voice might say, release them. Forgive, not because they deserve it, but because it will free you. Your thoughts will tell you to protect your ego. His voice will tell you to protect your soul. In everyday life, this plays out in ways most people miss. Imagine you're scrolling through social media and someone posts something passive, aggressive that's clearly aimed at you. Your thoughts instantly start writing a response in your mind. Sharp, clever, maybe even funny in a savage way. It feels good to think about putting them in their place. But then you feel another pull inside, one that says, don't engage. It's not worth your peace. Walk away. That's not your flesh talking, because your flesh wanted war. That's the voice of God challenging your instinct to clap back. Or think about finances. Your thoughts will always justify spending when you want something. You've been working hard. You deserve it. This is a treat for yourself. And yes, there's nothing wrong with enjoyment. But God's voice may say, not now. That money has an assignment. Save it for what I've planned for you. Your thoughts feed the immediate appetite. His voice feeds your future. Your flesh always looks for the shortcut. God's voice often calls you to take the long road, because the long road builds the character you'll need to handle the blessing when it comes. That's why His voice can feel uncomfortable. It's not trying to please your emotions, it's trying to grow your capacity. And growth is never painless. There's a part of you that will always resist hard work, sacrifice, and delayed gratification. Your thoughts will rationalize it away. I'll start tomorrow. I need to be in the right mood first. I deserve a break. God's voice won't let you hide behind those excuses. It will say, start now. Do it even if you don't feel ready. Stay consistent even when no one is watching. And while your flesh protests, deep down you know that voice is leading you somewhere better than your feelings ever could. Look at how this works in relationships. Your thoughts will tell you to stay where you're comfortable, with people who flatter you, agree with you, and never challenge you. God's voice will push you toward connections that stretch you, people who see more in you than you see in yourself, people who will call you out when you're wrong. Your thoughts will cling to comfort because it feels safe. God's voice will send you into growth environments because He knows safety without growth leads to stagnation. The truth is, your flesh is addicted to instant gratification. It wants to eat what it craves now, say what it feels now, do what's easiest now. God's voice looks beyond now. It's invested in who you're becoming. That's why His instructions sometimes feel inconvenient, even irritating. He's not trying to rob you of joy. He's trying to give you a joy that isn't dependent on temporary satisfaction. Daily life is full of these small battles. You wake up and feel like staying in bed instead of showing up for that early meeting. Your thoughts will tell you, rest, you earned it. God's voice might say, get up. This meeting will open a door you've been praying for. You feel like holding on to that grudge because it makes you feel strong. Your thoughts will say, if you forgive, they win. God's voice will say, if you forgive, you win because you break the chain holding you back. This is why so many people miss the difference between their own thoughts and God's voice. They expect Him to agree with their feelings. But the truth is, the voice of God will often sound like the opposite of what you wanted to hear. Your thoughts will aim to protect your image. His voice will aim to protect your integrity. Your thoughts will seek the reward now. His voice will prepare you for a reward that lasts. When you start recognizing this pattern, you'll notice something. Every time you follow your thoughts over God's voice, you get a moment of pleasure, but a residue of regret. Every time you follow God's voice over your thoughts, you may feel uncomfortable at first, but later you stand taller, stronger, and more at peace. And that's when you realize the flesh is loud, but the Spirit is wise. The flesh promises comfort, but God's voice delivers transformation. When God speaks, what He says will always produce movement, growth, and tangible results. His voice doesn't just sound good, it accomplishes something. It plants a seed that begins to grow the moment you obey it. Your own thoughts, on the other hand, are experts at producing reasons why you can't, shouldn't, or don't have to move. They generate excuses that feel intelligent, but keep you stuck. God's voice will point you toward action. Your thoughts will point you toward delay. One creates fruit, the other creates frustration. Think about it. When an instruction truly comes from God, you can't just sit still with it. It stirs you, it compels you, it makes you move even if you don't have all the details. His words carry a kind of energy that fuels obedience. But your own thoughts are master negotiators. They'll say, you don't have the resources yet, the timing isn't right, or you're not qualified. They sound logical, but their goal is to keep you where you are. God's voice doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It tells you to move now, trusting that provision and clarity will meet you along the way. You can see this in daily life. Imagine you feel a strong inner prompting to call someone and encourage them. It comes out of nowhere, but you can't shake it. That's God's voice producing immediate fruit, the fruit of love, connection, and maybe even healing for that person. But then your thoughts kick in. They're probably busy. They might think it's weird. I'll do it later. Hours pass, days pass, and the moment is gone. Nothing was produced except a missed opportunity. God's voice was ready to grow something. Your thoughts built a wall around it. The fruit God's voice produces isn't always instant, but it's always inevitable when you follow through. Sometimes it's the fruit of personal growth, like the discipline you gain from consistently waking up early to work on a project He told you to start. Sometimes it's the fruit of impact, like the lives touched when you step into that ministry, business, or creative work He put on your heart. Your thoughts will tell you to wait until you feel motivated. God's voice will tell you to start now so that momentum can build. Excuses are the language of delay. They're a way for your mind to protect you from perceived risk, but that protection often costs you progress. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time, but really you're just waiting for fear to disappear. And fear rarely leaves without action. God's voice knows that, which is why He calls you to move in spite of fear. Once you take the step, the fear begins to lose its grip, and the fruit begins to show. Consider the person who feels led to go back to school or learn a new skill. God's voice says, "Now is the season to prepare. Enroll. Begin." Your thoughts say, "You're too old. You don't have the money. You're too busy." Years pass, and nothing has changed except the list of reasons why it still can't be done. That's how thoughts work when left unchecked. They replace action with analysis, movement with mental debates. And while you're debating, the opportunity is moving further away. God's voice is also marked by its ability to bring results that multiply. It's not just about you. When you obey, the benefits ripple outward. That's why you'll often see one act of obedience producing results in areas you didn't expect. You forgive someone because God's voice prompted you, and suddenly your own heart feels lighter. Your relationships improve, and your sleep comes easier. That's fruit. Your thoughts, however, will try to keep you from forgiving by replaying the hurt and reminding you why they don't deserve it. The result of following that voice, bitterness that takes root and begins to affect everything else in your life. The difference between the two voices becomes clear over time. When it's God's voice, even small steps begin to produce visible shifts. When it's just your thoughts, you can spend months, even years, thinking about the same thing without ever seeing progress. Your thoughts will say, "I'll do it when I have more money. I'll start when I feel ready." Or, "I'm just waiting for confirmation." Meanwhile, God's voice is saying, "You already have enough to take the first step. Start with what you have, where you are, and watch what happens." Daily life is full of moments where you can test this. If you sense a prompting to help someone financially, your thoughts will quickly run the numbers and tell you why it's a bad idea. But if you follow God's voice and give, somehow there's always enough left. And often more than enough comes back to you in ways you couldn't have predicted. That's fruit that no excuse could have produced. There's also a subtle truth here. Excuses feel safe because they give you permission to stay the same. Fruit feels risky because it forces you to change. But the moment you choose fruit over excuses, you shift from being someone who talks about change to someone who lives it. Your life begins to bear evidence of obedience. And that evidence speaks louder than any explanation you could give. The voice of God always produces something lasting. It might be character, opportunities, relationships, or breakthroughs. But it will be real and it will be measurable. Your own thoughts can be brilliant at creating scenarios and plans in your head that never make it into reality. They can convince you that you're making progress simply because you're thinking about it a lot. But thinking is not fruit. Obeying is fruit. Acting is fruit. Moving when God says move is fruit. And when you live from that place, excuses start to sound weaker, and results start to speak for themselves. When a voice speaks inside you, it either fuels your courage or feeds your fear. God's voice will always push you to believe beyond what you see, to trust in the invisible even when the visible is screaming it's impossible. Your thoughts, on the other hand, often try to protect you from disappointment by keeping you small, keeping you safe, keeping you locked in the prison of what you think you can handle. The tragedy is, what you think you can handle is far less than what you are truly capable of. Many people never live the life they were born to live because they confuse their protective, fearful thoughts for wisdom. They call it being realistic, when in truth it's just unbelief wearing a disguise. Think about the times you had a dream so strong it almost scared you. One moment you felt an unshakable certainty. This is what I meant to do. But then another thought came creeping in, whispering, what if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if people laugh at you? That second voice wasn't building your faith, it was draining it. God's voice will stretch you, but it will never belittle you. Your thoughts might calculate all the risks, but God calculates all the possibilities. Daily life gives us so many examples of this. A young woman feels impressed to start a business, something that keeps burning in her heart. But the moment she begins planning, she hears in her head, "You don't have the money. You don't know enough. The market is too hard." She thinks it's wisdom to hold back, but in reality, she's letting fear dress itself up as logic. God's voice might not give her the full map, but it will give her one clear step. Start with what you have. Faith doesn't require you to see the whole staircase. It asks you to take the first step, trusting the rest will be revealed. Sometimes God's voice will sound illogical to the mind. It might tell you to give when you think you need to keep, to speak when you think you should stay silent, to apply for the opportunity that seems out of reach. Why? Because faith grows when you step into uncertainty with trust. If you only move when everything feels safe, you're not living by faith. You're living by control. The voice of God invites you into growth, and growth never happens in comfort. Here's the thing, your thoughts are shaped by your past, your experiences, your mistakes, and your limitations. They're often built to keep you from repeating pain. That's why they're so quick to say, "Don't try." But God's voice is shaped by your purpose, your destiny, and your future. It speaks from where you're going, not where you've been. That's why His voice calls you higher. It sees you already standing in victory when your thoughts are still processing the battle. A man once told me he felt led to move to a new city for a career shift, but his thoughts wouldn't stop reminding him of all the reasons it could go wrong. He stayed where he was, comfortable but unfulfilled. Years later, the same opportunity came around, but the cost of inaction had been heavy. He had lost time, connections, and momentum. Your thoughts will make you delay until the perfect moment. But God's voice knows that obedience in the imperfect moment is where miracles happen. One of the most powerful tests to know whether it's God's voice or your thoughts is to ask, does this stretch my faith or shrink it? If it builds your confidence in what is possible through courage and trust, it's not your fear talking. If it makes you smaller, more hesitant, more paralyzed, it's your human reasoning trying to keep you safe. And let's be honest, some of us have been safey for so long that we've missed the wild, beautiful, risky adventure of purpose. When you feel torn between the two voices, remember this: God's voice gives you peace even in risk. It's like standing at the edge of a cliff with wings you've never used before. Your mind says, you'll fall, but something deeper says, you'll fly. And when you take that leap, you discover that what you thought was the end was only the beginning. The difference is this: God's voice is rooted in possibility, while your thoughts are rooted in probability. Possibility says, yes, it can happen. Probability says, it's not likely, so don't bother. But history is filled with people who did the unlikely because they listened to the voice that told them to step forward when everything else told them to sit down. The question is, which voice will you follow the next time you stand at that crossroads? There comes a moment in every person's life when they must stop asking for permission to live the life they were created for. You have been waiting for the perfect timing, the perfect resources, the perfect confirmation, but deep down you already know the permission has already been given. Life is not waiting on someone else to validate you. Life is waiting on you to rise. The future you dream of is not built in someday. It is built in right now. You have walked through storms, and you've survived nights you thought would break you. But survival is not your finish line. It is only proof that you were meant to build something greater. You didn't endure all those battles just to sit on the sidelines and watch your destiny pass by. Every tear you cried watered the seed of greatness in you. Every disappointment was training your spirit to stand taller, not shrink smaller. There's a reason your heart still beats with ideas, visions, and dreams that keep you awake at night. That's not a coincidence. That's not just you wanting more. That is purpose calling your name. Purpose doesn't whisper to the unqualified. It shouts into the lives of those willing to step forward, even when the ground beneath them shakes. You are not here by accident. You were placed here on purpose, for a purpose, and with purpose. Don't let the opinions of people who gave up on their own dreams talk you out of yours. They will tell you it's too late, too hard, too risky, not because it's impossible, but because they never had the courage to try. Stop letting their fear become your forecast. Your vision is not for their understanding, it is for your obedience. Some people won't see the value in you until you prove them wrong, and others will never see it at all. Either way, you must move forward. There is greatness inside you that will never be unlocked by comfort. Comfort is the enemy of growth. If you want to become more, you must be willing to walk into the unknown with nothing but faith as your guide. The road will not always be straight. Sometimes it will be uphill, sometimes it will be in the dark, but every step will make you stronger. Do not fear the climb. It is the climb that gives you the strength to stand at the top. The truth is, the world is not changed by those who play it safe. History does not remember the people who stayed in line and kept quiet. It remembers the ones who dared to believe when everyone else doubted. The ones who stood up when everyone else sat down. The ones who said, "I will not let my story end here." You are that person. You have that choice. Life will test you. It will push you to the edge of what you think you can endure. But the edge is where you discover your wings. And when you leap, you will find that you were never meant to fall. You were meant to soar. Do not stand at the edge forever staring at the drop. Trust that what is inside you is greater than what's in front of you. One day, you will look back on this season and realize that the very thing you were afraid of was the doorway to your breakthrough. One day, you will stand in rooms you once prayed just to walk past. One day, you will live in the reality you're only dreaming about now. But that day will not come by wishing. It will come by moving. So rise up. Speak to your fear and tell it, "You will not control me." Speak to your doubt and declare, "You will not silence me." Speak to your destiny and shout, "I am ready for you." The world is not waiting for another copy. It is waiting for your original. And if you dare to step into who you truly are, nothing and no one will be able to stop what is coming next. You are not here to take up space. You are here to make a mark so deep that generations after you will know you were here. And that starts with one decision: to believe, to act, and to never turn back. The stage is set, the moment is now, and the only thing left is for you to take it.